So hello, I'm Dr. Justin Davis with Florida Marijuana Doctors, and I'm here today having a conversation with Gabby, who happens to be a patient care specialist, meaning that she's very knowledgeable about marijuana and helping patients to get exactly what they need. So on my end, I see someone, I determine that they're eligible, I write them an order for marijuana, and then I basically have to say, I give them as much information as I can, but I always tell people, there's a lot of information, there's a big learning curve with this, there's so many different things to try, and you have to keep track of it. And then I always I say, well, but don't worry, when you get to a dispensary, you're going to have a patient care specialist, like Gabby here, who can help guide you further through the process. And you can always, contact me or my office, and we'll help you if you have any further questions. So what happens after that when the patients, I send them off to a dispensary. And by the way, as a physician, it doesn't matter to me what dispensary a patient goes to. I just want them to get the best care possible. So what happens?
Absolutely. So they come into us, and the first thing we do is verify that their paperwork is in order, their recommendations, and their card. We put a folder together for them, and then the next thing we do is sit down with them and talk to them. They have an option to have a private consultation. They have an option to go in the back directly with the patient consultant to purchase. Sometimes they do have an idea of what they're looking for, and they have a good grasp of what their recommendation covers. Sometimes they feel a little bit more hesitant, nervous sometimes. And so they will come and ask for a sit-down consultation. Mm-hmm. At that time, we go over their recommendation with them. We go over what the doctor has recommended, whether it's oral or inhalation or topical, the milligrams.
So let me ask you a question. Do they need to make an appointment to do this, or do they just walk into a dispensary?
They can walk into a dispensary and ask to speak to any one of the qualified consultants that will give them the same information. At that time, we will make sure that the paperwork is in order and that the recommendation that they have is what they're looking for. Okay. Once we have made sure that they understand what it is that there is available to them, then we will go over the products with them.
And so I'm just going to clarify, when she says what's available to you, the reason that she's saying that is because as a physician, when I write an order, it's not just saying, oh yes, this person can have medical marijuana. I have to specify, I have to say, can they use CBD only products, or can they use high THC products, or
Right.
both? And not only that, but can they have flower, and can they have what forms? So oral.
Mm-hmm. So there are, right now in the registry, there are the 5 routes of recommendation, and we have the oral, sublingual, inhalation, topical, and suppository. And so we will sit down with them and see, okay, Dr. Davis or whatever doctor may have recommended, and we say, you have an oral recommendation for 5,000 milligrams of THC, we look into now the recommendations for the flower, and that goes by weight. So that's been very different, adjusting to that and the types of recommendation, helping the patients understand that right now they have a 2.5 ounce for every 35 days. We keep track of that at the dispensary. We work closely with the doctors to try to make sure that that is all on point.
Mm-hmm. And another thing is, the orders that I know as a physician, when I write an order, I also have to specify not only the amount of marijuana that one can purchase, is it high THC or mostly CBD, what route, and also the length of time that
the dosing.
Well, the dosing and how long is the order good for?
Right.
And 70 days is the most typical amount of time for an order, because that's the maximum that the state allows. But we can write 3 70-day orders. But after every 70 days, it resets back to zero.
That's
or
right.
not back to zero, but back to the original amount, or whatever we write if we adjust it. But it resets after every 70 days.
Yeah. And one of the other things that a lot of patients need to understand when they come in is exactly that it resets after every 210 days, right? But that it's 6 months. It's every 210 days for the recommendation, but it's once a year for the actual card.
Yes, that's a
right?
great point, and there's always a lot of confusion about that.
Yeah.
We actually had a segment earlier where we had spoken about how to get your card,
Right.
and that's a really good clarification that the card that's issued by the state, right, that's good for a year, and you have to apply for that independently with the state when it's time to renew that. Whereas your certification, so the doctor to see you, see how you're doing, recertify you and write new orders for another 210 days, that occurs every 210 days, which equals 7 months. Great point.
Yep. Another thing that we do focus on when we have a patient at the end of a transaction, and this is something that a lot of people don't either know or don't even talk about, is that we have the labels that we print out for each patient, and that has the product on it, and that's an explanation that we go through with them as part of the patient process. So they understand what product belongs to them, when they purchased it, where they purchased it, and all that information. We also explain to them how to read the registry, how to go back in after they made a purchase to read their dispensation.
Yeah, that's important. That's important.
Yeah, so that they can keep track of their own purchases and how many milligrams come out for each purchase and how much weight comes out for each purchase of flour.
So what she's saying is that, you know, there's a registry. The website is it's OMMU, and in order to apply for your card, for example, you have to go to that. We all use the registry, but in different ways. So the dispensaries look at what are your orders, you know, how much marijuana can you purchase, what have you purchased. As a physician, I'm actually putting in the orders and putting in the certifications. But as a patient, you can access that, as Gabby was saying, not only to renew your card annually, but also you can actually look and see your orders, how many days you have left, how much you've bought, how much you have left over. And so that's a really important skill to have.
Yeah, it's absolutely very important to keep track of your recommendation as well, because as you come into the store, then you know what you're working with your milligrams. So when you come to see a consultant, you can come with an idea of what you want to purchase that day.
And another thing that I think a lot of times patients don't understand is that each order category, so let's say, you know, high THC oral, and you have another order for high THC by inhalation, these are actually separate orders. And sometimes I equate it to, what if, you know, you had, well, maybe this is not so apropos these days, but in the olden days, you know, when you had cell phones, you had talk minutes and you had, and you had texting
rollover
minutes, right?
And all that, yeah.
And so the talking minutes and the texting minutes are separate. Just like with each order for marijuana, whether it's oral or inhalation, they're separate orders and they have separate milligrams, and you use those up separately. And by the way, folks, sorry, but there's no rollover minute. So when you reach your 70 days,
I get asked that
it
all
resets.
the time. Yeah. The best way that we explain it is you have the different routes, which are the 5 that we talked about, and then you have different buckets, right, in each route. And so you have the CBD and the THC, and each route, and we take from each bucket every time you come. And that seems to be a pretty good explanation that works for the patients to just know which bucket to pull it out of.
And they can pull it from multiple buckets on one visit,
It depends on the
right?
product. Yeah, it depends on the product. Each product is designed to come from specific buckets. Like the capsules will only come from an oral dispensation, but they can purchase oral products, sublingual products, and inhalation products all in one, and it all gets dispensed differently.
And a lot of times patients say, well, you know, how much can I purchase? Do I have to get everything at once? Or can I, you know, can you get it piecemeal?
You can get, I always say this, if you've got money in milligrams, you can get what you need. You don't have to fill the recommendation in one step. Some patients do prefer to come in and just get all their products in one and shop once every 70 days. But the products vary, so a lot of patients like to just grab a little bit and go and then come back and try a few things, especially the new patients. They like to try small batches of things and kind of determine what's working for them and then come back for more.
That's what I recommend usually as a physician is, you know, if somebody's been using medical marijuana for a long time and they know exactly what works for them, they may choose to make as little, you know, as few visits as possible.
Right.
But for somebody that's just really starting out, it's really important to try different products, different routes of administration, different dispensaries. Keep a log and really figure out what works the best for you.
That's right.
And so you don't want to use up all your milligrams in one shot. You want to be able to try
Right.
different things.
Right. Right. It's important to keep track of what you're using, and so that you can keep track of the registry. Also keep track of what works for you, so that when you do come back and sit down with any one of the consultants, you can say, hey, you know what, I really liked this product, but I want to try something else because I need a little bit more. And we're able to sit down and do that based on what the patient is learning as they come into the store.
Well, Gabby, it was my pleasure. Again, Gabby Medina, patient care consultant.
Thank you so much, Dr. D, for having me. I appreciate the invite, and I hope to be invited soon again.
And again, coming to you from In the Know, this is Dr. Justin Davis with Florida Marijuana Doctors. And as always, taking the high road.